Compensatory education. What is it and do I need it? Disability Rights Florida receives its funding, responsibility, and authority under 9 federal programs to protect the rights of Floridians with disabilities. It is a not-for-profit corporation since 1987, with offices in Tallahassee, Tampa, Hollywood, and Gainesville, as well as satellite offices in several other communities. Our mission: to advance the quality of life, dignity, equality, self-determination, and freedom of choice of persons with disabilities through collaboration, education, advocacy, as well as legal and legislative strategies. About your presenter. Ms. Cassian Blanco has worked with Disability Rights Florida since 2019. She received her law degree from St. Thomas University School of Law and her Bachelor of Science from the University of Central Florida. She is a member of Florida State Bar and is a staff attorney with Disability Rights Florida on the Advocacy, Education, and Outreach team. Her work focuses primarily on primary and secondary special education. Ms. Cassian Blanco is admitted to practice in the U.S. District Courts for the Southern, Middle, and Northern District of Florida. What we will cover: what is compensatory education, case examples and laws, advocacy and legal strategies, and hypotheticals. Legal authority. Where is compensatory education found in the Individuals with Disability Education Act, also known as IDEA? In short, it is not. Compensatory education has been established through case law when there is a failure of an educational agency to provide FAPE to a student with a disability as required by IDEA. IDEA authorizes the court to grant such relief as the court determines appropriate. IDEA. The IDEA makes available a free, appropriate public education, also known as FAPE, to eligible students with disabilities throughout the nation and ensures special education and related services to those students. IDEA eligibility. To be eligible for special education under the IDEA, a child must have a disability under one of the following categories and must need special education services and related services: autism spectrum disorder, deaf or hard of hearing, developmentally delayed, dual sensory impairment, emotional or behavioral disability, intellectual disabilities, language impairment, orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, specific learning disabilities, speech impairment, traumatic brain injury, or visual impairment. Hourly equivalent to the 180-day school year. State board rules state that each school district shall operate all schools for a term of 180 actual teaching days, or the hourly equivalent of 180 actual teaching days. This equates to the following: grades kindergarten through 3rd, no fewer than 720 total instructional hours. Authorized pre-kindergarten ESE programs, no fewer than 720 total instructional hours. And for grades 4 through 12, no fewer than 900 total instructional hours. What is compensatory education? Compensatory education is designed to put a student in the place they would have been had the student not been deprived of special education and related services. It must be given above and beyond the normal school day. It does not replace required services. It is an equitable remedy to remediate the loss of FAPE. It is not to punish a school district. When to consider compensatory education. 1. Failure to implement an IEP. Services on IEP that were not provided, such as missed sessions, instruction, or related services. 2. Child find failure. Failure to timely identify a child with a disability, delay in evaluations, or lingering in response to intervention, or MTSS. 3. Inappropriate IEP. Services that should have been on an IEP but were not, failure to implement comparable services, or failure to consider the full continuum of services. Case law. A case out of the 11th Circuit held that compensatory education, like retroactive reimbursement, is necessary to preserve a right to a free education, and providing a compensatory education should serve as a deterrent against states unnecessarily prolonging litigation in order to decrease their potential liability. A case out of DC held that Just as an IEP's focus on students' individual needs, so must awards compensating for past violations rely on individualized assessments. Case law, the Draper case, held that the purpose of compensatory education is to provide services prospectively to compensate for a past deficient program and should place children in the position they would have been but for the violation. Draper further went on to explain that although ordinary education programs need only provide some benefit, compensatory education awards must do more. Case law, Strawn. In Strawn, although the student had lost 1 year of education, the court ruled that because the optimum time for language acquisition is at a younger age than the student's present age, more than 1 year of compensatory education might have been appropriate. Case law, MC. In MC, the court held that a school district that knows or should know that a child has an inappropriate IEP or is not receiving more than a de minimis educational benefit must correct the situation. Although a student is entitled to compensatory education for the time missed, this excluded the time reasonably required for the school district to rectify the problem. MC also held that compensatory education may extend past a child's 21st birthday to make up for an earlier deprivation. Standard of educational benefit. The Supreme Court held, to meet its substantive obligation under the IDEA, a school must offer an IEP reasonably calculated to enable a child to make progress appropriate in light of the child's circumstances. Calculation. Compensatory education can be awarded by the quantitative method or the qualitative method. Therefore, awards are not always provided on a minute-for-minute basis. Although minute-for-minute may be used to provide a baseline, ultimately the focus will be on placing the student where they would have been had the services been received in the first place. Calculation, the quantitative method. Compensatory education is awarded hour for hour of time lost. For example, a student who lost 10 weeks of speech therapy, the speech therapy should be 30 minutes weekly. 10 weeks times 30 minutes equals 300 minutes or 5 hours of speech therapy. These 5 hours must be provided in addition to special education and related services the student is already receiving. Calculation, the qualitative method. Compensatory education is awarded based on the educational benefit lost. For example, student lost 10 weeks of speech therapy. Speech therapy should be 30 minutes weekly. After conducting new evaluations and reviewing recent data showing regression, it is determined that 30 minutes would not be sufficient to bring student to where he should have been, and 60 minutes is more appropriate. 10 weeks times 60 minutes equals 600 minutes or 10 hours of speech therapy. These 10 hours must be provided in addition to special education and related services the student is already receiving. Extended school year. Is compensatory education the same as extended school year, also known as ESY? No. Compensatory education is special education or services that are owed to the student. ESY is provided to a student in addition to the services they receive through the regular school year and is designed to help maintain skills over school breaks to prevent regression in critical life skills related to academics, communication, independent functioning, and self-sufficiency, social or emotional development or behavior, or recoup skills or maintain emerging skills, or if the nature of the student's disability is such that the student would be unlikely to benefit from their education without the provision of ESY. Extended school year. Extenuating circumstances pertinent to the student's current situation that indicate the likelihood that FAPE would not be provided without ESY services. Although compensatory education may be provided during ESY, they are not interchangeable. Therefore, a student who is owed compensatory education for services missed, but also requires ESY, must receive both. A student may have a perfect IEP and still need ESY, while for compensatory education to apply, there had to be a failure. Factors outlined by the Florida Department of Education: regression or recoupment, critical point of instruction, emerging skills, nature of severity of disability, interfering behaviors, rate of progress, or special circumstances. For example, transition from school to work. COVID-19 and compensatory education. Compensatory education does not require bad faith on behalf of the schools or gross negligence. Therefore, missed special education or related services as a result of COVID-19 closures or other special circumstances may entitle a student to compensatory education. Awards of compensatory education for special education and services missed as a result of the pandemic are not automatic and will need to be evaluated on an individual basis and look at various factors such as the actual loss of services, the student's present level of performance, progress, and regression. I think I need it. What should I do? Document any missed sessions, services, or issues. Maintain communication with teachers and service providers, and understand how services are delivered and data is tracked. Ask for progress reports. Test your child at home for progress or regression. Due to COVID-19, school closures and distance learning, services have been provided differently. Video or audio recording the student periodically can help provide a record of any progression or regression for future discussion. COVID-19 has also resulted in a change in the delivery of services. While the delivery might be different, it is still important to have the student try to participate in the service and not just refuse outright. Advocacy and legal strategies. How can you make your requests? Advocacy letter. Request any denials in writing, such as a prior written notice. State complaint or due process. Hypothetical 1. Students' IEP team determined that students should receive one 30-minute session of occupational therapy per week. No occupational therapy was provided during the 2019 school year. There were 36 weeks in the 2019 school year. 36 weeks times 30 minutes per week equals 1,080 minutes. The 1,080 minutes of occupational therapy must be provided in addition to the occupational therapy the student is to receive on his current IEP. Hypothetical 2. Parent requests a student who is on RTI without progress to be evaluated for specific learning disability, also known as SLD, and language impairment. Student was found eligible for an IEP under the SLD category, but there was a delay in the language evaluations. Even with an IEP in place, students still made no significant academic progress in 25 weeks and remained on the kindergarten reading level, although in 3rd grade. Student in the meantime was receiving ESOL services to work on language skills, although English was student's primary language. After submitting a state complaint, student was entitled to 25 hours of specially designed instruction for reading. The ESOL services were not appropriate and removed, and language therapy was added and 6 hours were added due to the delay in evaluating. Hypothetical 3. Student with an IEP received 2 years of language services focusing on letter sounds. Student did not make significant progress during this time. After an independent education evaluation determined that student's primary of need was in pragmatics rather than letter sounds, a compensatory education request was made for 2 years before a due process complaint was filed, because although the services on the IEP were received, they were not comparable to what the student actually required, based on the evaluations, and the student did not make meaningful gains. Compensatory education was awarded based on the benefit lost had the student received services targeting the proper area of need and accounted for any progress that was made based on the services rendered. Resources. Below is a list of links we provided for additional information on compensatory education as well as special education. Last but not least, if you need to contact Disability Rights Florida, you can do so by calling 1-800-342-0823, or you could also find more information on our website at www.disabilityrightsflorida.org. Thank you.